Even as Trump launched into a furious tirade, Jasmine Crockett stood her ground with a calm yet powerful resolve. She subtly questioned a widely accepted narrative that Jared Kushner is unequivocally the father of Ivanka's children. Perhaps she implied that story wasn't as certain as everyone believed. The studio lights glared, cameras zoomed in, and the air buzzed with the usual anticipation for a political debate. It was supposed to be a standard back and forth between leaders, often at odds. On one side, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat poised and observant, ready for questioning. Across from her was Donald Trump, a man never shy about commanding the spotlight, especially when the cameras were rolling. From the outset, it was clear this wouldn't be a calm discussion. Trump immediately went on the offensive, not with policy arguments, but with deeply personal attacks. His voice with its familiar sharp edge cut through the studio as he leaned into the microphone. He accused Crockett of dishonesty, claiming she had no right to represent the American people. He flung accusations of shady connections and whispered, "deals," each word carefully chosen to demolish her reputation rather than debate her ideas. The audience could almost feel the impact of his words like a volley of arrows aimed squarely at her. Most people facing such intense fire cameras, rolling, millions watching, a former president labeling them a fraud, would crumble. Many would shrink, perhaps stammer, or nervously attempted defense. But Jasmine Crockett remained perfectly still. She sat upright, her gaze steady on Trump, her expression calm, but intensely focused. It was as if she had anticipated this exact onslaught, as if she had been waiting for it. When Trump saw his initial barges failed to unnerve her, he escalated. His voice grew louder, more aggressive, interrupting her at every attempt to speak. He declared her political future non-existent, hinting her career was already over. His words weren't meant to persuade, they were meant to annihilate. Yet, a peculiar transformation occurred. The more intensely Trump attacked, the more tranquil Crockett appeared. She didn't raise her voice, nor did she retaliate with insults. Instead, she simply sat, allowing him to exhaust his fury, much like a seasoned fighter conserving energy while their opponent swings wildly, eventually tiring themselves out. Behind that serene exterior, Crockett's mind was racing. She knew that merely defending herself would be a losing battle. Trump was simply too loud, too relentless, too adept at hijacking the narrative. But to truly cut through the uproar, she needed a different weapon, and she possessed it. For months, Crockett had safeguarded deeply sensitive information, a truth capable of shattering the carefully constructed image Trump had built around his family. She hadn't intended to deploy it tonight, but as Trump's attacks intensified, moving beyond mere argument to outright character assassination, a realization dawned on her. This was the moment. Slowly, deliberately, she leaned forward. Her hands settled firmly on the desk. Her voice, though not raised, was steady and powerful enough to pierce Trump's relentless interruptions. The audience, still caught in the whirlwind of Trump's rage, was unaware. But Crockett was poised to dramatically alter the course of the conversation. She wouldn't play Trump's game of defense and counter-insult. Instead, she would expose a secret long buried beneath layers of silence and denial. And she knew precisely where to begin with Ivanka Trump. The moment she chose to bring Ivanka into the discussion, Crockett stepped onto treacherous ground. Trump might hurl insults at politicians all day, but the instant his family became fair game, the true firestorm began. The audience hadn't seen it coming. The hosts were unprepared. Even Trump himself, snorts, sharp and defensive as ever, was blindsided. But Jasmine Crockett was ready. This wasn't just another live debate. This was about to become the moment hidden truths slipped into the light, where the battle between a powerful man and a determined congresswoman would cross into territory no one expected. The room grew taut. Cameras zoomed in tighter. The audience leaned closer to their screens. And with a single sentence, Crockett would seize control of the entire night. The moment hung in the air, charged like electricity before a storm. Jasmine Crockett had endured. Trump's insults, his attempts to bulldo her voice, and his loud attacks aimed at crushing her credibility. But now the tables were about to turn. Shh. She leaned in, her voice lower, steadier, more deliberate. Every eye in the studio locked onto her. Then, with a calm that cut through the chaos, she spoke. Sometimes the truth about family lineage is hidden in plain sight, and it's time to stop hiding. It was just one sentence, but it landed like a thunderclap. The hosts froze. The crew froze. Even the audience watching at home could sense something monumental was about to unfold. And for the first time all night, Trump didn't immediately cut in. For the briefest moment he was silent. But Crockett wasn't finished. She let the silence stretch, building suspense. Before dropping a line that sent the studio into shock, there is significant reason to question. The commonly accepted story that Jared Kushner is the father of Ivanka's children. Gasps rippled across the room. The hosts blinked in disbelief. A camera operator nearly lost focus, his lens jerking as if even he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. And the audience at home. They leaned closer to their screens, hearts pounding, struggling to process what had just been said. It wasn't just shocking, it was dangerous. Crockett hadn't revealed everything. Not yet. She'd given just enough to rattle the ground beneath Trump's feet. Just enough to make people wonder. The hosts tried to regain control. Congresswoman Crockett, one pressed, his voice almost trembling. Are you saying what it sounds like? You're saying you're suggesting Ivanka's children might not? He trailed off, seemingly afraid to finish the sentence, but Crockett didn't answer directly. She sat back slightly, her expression unreadable, as if she understood that. The power of silence could sometimes outweigh words. Trump, however, could not stay silent. His face turned crimson, his voice shot up, and he erupted. Lies! Disgusting lies! He shouted, jabbing his finger across the table. This is fake. This is garbage. You're attacking my family because you have nothing else. He kept going, his voice echoing louder than anyone else in the room. He accused Crockett of plotting against him, accused the hosts of staging a smear, accused everyone on set of conspiring against his family. But the more he shouted, the more obvious it became. He was rattled. The audience could see it. His fury wasn't the confident swagger they had come to expect. This was different. His words stumbled over each other. His interruptions became frantic. His body leaned forward aggressively as if trying to shut down the conversation with sheer force. And that reaction, that raw, uncontrolled anger, only lent Crockett's words more weight, as if there was truly nothing to her hint. Why would Trump be so desperate to silence it? The host sensed it too. They pressed again more carefully this time. Congresswoman, you've just raised something extraordinary. Do you have more details? Can you explain what you meant? Crockett's eyes flicked toward Trump, then back to the hosts. Her calmness was almost eerie compared to his chaos. She chose her words carefully, not rushing, not spilling everything at once. I think the American people deserve honesty, she said simply. And sometimes the stories we're told don't match the evidence we uncover. The room tensed again, every second, stretching longer than the last. Trump cut in with another furious denial, calling her a disgrace and an embarrassment. He tried to drown her out with sheer volume, his voice practically shaking with rage. But Crockett didn't yell back. She didn't need to. She had planted the seed, the thought, the suspicion, and that's what made it so powerful. The audience watching didn't need all the details yet. They didn't need proof spelled out in that moment. All they needed was that question planted in their minds. What if Jared Kushner isn't the father of Ivanka's children? It was the kind of thought that couldn't be unheard. It's the kind of hint that lingered, whispered, and grew stronger the more someone tried to shut it down. And as Trump's fury filled the studio as he waved his hands and slammed the table, the contrast was striking. His anger only made Crockett look calmer, stronger, more believable. The more he tried to silence her, the more people wanted to hear what she had to say. And Crockett knew it. She hadn't revealed the full bombshell yet, not even close. But by choosing her words carefully, by letting the tension rise, she had already taken control of the entire broadcast. Everyone in that studio, hosts, crew, even Trump himself, understood one thing. Whatever was coming next, it was going to change everything. The second Jasmine Crockett dropped her cryptic hint, Donald Trump's composure began to crack. It wasn't a slow crumble, it was sharp, immediate, like a glass shattering on the floor. At first he tried to laugh it off, an awkward forced chuckle that didn't match the look in his eyes. He wagged a finger across the table and said, "Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Nobody believes that nonsense." But the tremble in his voice betrayed him. And then, almost in an instant, his temper exploded. His face turned red, his jaw tightened, and he leaned so far across the desk, you'd think he was trying to step out of his chair. His voice rose with every word echoing through the studio. "Lies! Pure lies!" he shouted, stabbing the air with his finger. This is a disgrace. This woman is a disgrace. She should be ashamed of herself for saying this garbage on television. The hosts shifted uncomfortably, trying to calm the chaos. But Trump wasn't listening. He talked over them, over Crockett, over anyone who dared to open their mouth. He didn't just want to disagree. He wanted to smother the conversation completely. But the more he shouted, the more it seemed like Jasmine Crockett had struck something raw, something sensitive. Because if her words were truly meaningless, wouldn't he just brush them off? Wouldn't he smile, shake his head, and call it silly? That's what confident people do when faced with baseless claims. They dismiss. They don't explode. But Trump wasn't dismissing. He was unraveling. Crockett, meanwhile, sat still. She didn't match his volume. She didn't throw back insults. Didn't even flinch. She simply watched him, calm, steady. Her eyes locked on him as if she could see right through the rage too, the fear underneath. It was like watching two fighters in the ring, one swinging wildly with no control, the other standing firm, letting the storm rage without moving an inch. The host tried again to step in. "So, President, let her finish." One began. Trump cut them off instantly. "I know she's not going to sit here and spread disgusting lies about my family. She's attacking Ivanka. She's attacking my grandchildren. It's evil, sick, and you're all letting her do it." He slammed his hand on the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the tent studio. The crew shifted nervously behind the cameras. The host exchanged uneasy glances, and millions of viewers at home could see it plain as day. Trump wasn't just angry, he was shaken. Meanwhile, Crockett finally spoke again, her tone quiet, but cutting through the noise like a blade. "Mr. Trump," she said softly, "if what I said wasn't true, why are you so afraid of it?" That question hung in the air like smoke. The studio went still. For the first time all night, Trump didn't have an instant comeback. His mouth opened, then closed again before he roared into another denial. "This is disgusting. You're trying to ruin families, trying to destroy lives. You should be ashamed. This is all fake. It's all made up." But his fury no longer had the same weight. Louder he got, the more desperate he looked, and the calmer Crockett stayed, the stronger she appeared. The audience at home could feel it. The power had shifted. Trump's shouting wasn't silencing her. It was amplifying her. Every interruption, every outburst, every furious denial only made her hint sound more believable. The hosts leaned forward nervously, pressing again. "Congresswoman, this is serious. Are you saying you have actual proof?" Trump tried to jump in, waving his hands, shouting, "Don't answer that! Don't you dare answer that!" But Crockett didn't even look at him. Looked straight at the hosts, her eyes steady, her voice unwavering. And in that moment, everyone in the studio and everyone watching at home realized something. Trump had lost control. The man who prided himself on dominating every stage, who never let anyone else steal the spotlight, was now drowning in his own fury. And JasmineCrockett.com and Collected was quietly pulling the ground out from beneath him. The clash had shifted. It was no longer Trump versus Crockett. It was Trump versus his own temper, and he was losing. The tension had reached its breaking point. Trump was red-faced, pounding the desk, spitting words faster than the microphones could catch. He was shouting about lies, conspiracies, disgrace. But Jasmine Crockett stayed perfectly composed, her hands folded neatly, her eyes locked straight ahead. The hosts leaned in, their voices trembling as they asked the question. Everyone at home was screaming in their heads. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying you have proof?" For a moment, silence blanketed the studio. Trump's chest heaved with rage. The audience held their breath. And Crockett, steady as stone, finally spoke. "My investigation," she said, her voice calm but sharp as glass, "uncovered compelling evidence that challenges the accepted story, and it points toward unexpected family connections directly linked to Donald Trump." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. The reaction was immediate. The hosts gasped. Crew members behind. The cameras looked at each other in disbelief. The audience watching at home felt their hearts racing. Trump erupted. Lies. Total lies. Made up by losers, by haters, by people who want to destroy me. He slammed his fist again, his voice cracking under the weight of his anger. "This is all fake. None of it is true. You're disgusting for even saying this on air." But Crockett didn't back down. She leaned closer to her microphone, her voice cutting through his rage like a blade through thick fog. "I spent months on this investigation," she continued. I spoke to people close to your family. I verified documents that were never meant to see the light of day. I compared timelines of Anka's pregnancies, your whereabouts, your private movements, and the pattern is undeniable." The hosts froze. The studio filled with whispers, gasps, the shuffling of chairs. Trump barked denials, his words tumbling over each other as he waved his hands, trying to block the sound of her voice. But the more he shouted, the clearer she became. "I have testimonies," she said firmly. "Insiders from your own circle who could no longer carry the weight of what they knew. Leaked photographs, written records, evidence that directly challenges the story you've sold to the public." Trump pounded the desk again. "None of it's real. You're lying. They're all liars. You're trying to destroy my family because you can't beat me any other way." His fury filled the room, but it only fed the moment. Viewers weren't seeing a calm leader denying an outrageous claim. They were seeing a man losing his grip on live television. Beside him sat a woman who wasn't blinking, wasn't breaking, wasn't even raising her voice. Crockett's next words came slowly, deliberately, like each one was a nail being hammered into the coffin of silence that had protected the Trump family for years. "I didn't want to go here, but after tonight, after you tried to smear me with false accusations, I refused to stay silent. The American people deserve to know who is shaping their future and what kind of secrets are being buried behind closed doors." The studio went dead quiet. Even Trump, for a split second, seemed stunned into silence. His eyes darted left and right, searching for a way to shut it down. Then, almost on cue, he launched back into his furious denials, his voice louder than ever. But the damage was done. Crockett had ripped open a door that could never be closed again. She had taken whispers and rumors and elevated them into the public eye, and she had done it in the one place where it couldn't be hidden, spun, or quietly erased live on national television. As the host tried to regain control, as Trump shouted himself hoarse, as the audience sat stunned, one thing became clear. This was no longer about a political debate. This was about power, truth, and secrets that could shake the foundation of a family and maybe even the country. And with every furious denial, Donald Trump made it look less like a baseless attack and more like Jasmine Crockett had struck the truth. The studio had never felt so tense. Cameras kept rolling, lights burned hotter, and every person watching knew they weren't just witnessing another political spat. Something far deeper had just been pulled into the open. Donald Trump was still raging, his voice echoing across the set. He shouted about conspiracies, about people out to destroy him, about enemies who would stop at nothing. His fists hit the desk again and again as if volume and force could erase what had just been said. But the more he shouted, the more hollow it sounded. His anger wasn't silencing the moment, it was fueling it. And Jasmine Crockett, she remained calm, steady, almost unnervingly composed. While Trump flailed and raged, she sat with the quiet power of someone who had already won the battle. Every denial from Trump only made her claim sound more believable. Every furious outburst made the contrast between them sharper. Finally, when the host managed to quiet the storm for just a second, Crockett spoke again, her voice low, but carrying a weight that no amount of shouting could drown out. "I didn't bring this forward to smear a family," she said. "I brought it forward because when private secrets shape public power, the people deserve the truth. Too often, the lives of those in charge don't match the image they sell to the country. In that disconnect, it matters." The hosts leaned forward, hanging on her every word. Even the audience, silent for what felt like minutes, seemed frozen in place. She continued, "Tonight, I revealed this here live because if I hadn't, it would be buried, hidden, locked away where no one could question it. And I believe in accountability. I believe the truth doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to the people." Her words cut through the heavy air like a blade. And though she had not laid out every piece of evidence on camera, the message was unmistakable. This was only the beginning. Trump, however, couldn't contain himself. His face burned red, his hands waved furiously, and his voice cracked with rage. "None of this is true. It's a hit job. She's lying to all of you. She should be thrown out of Congress for this. She should be sued." He pounded the desk once more, his fury boiling over for the world to see. But as his denials grew louder, his composure slipped further. What people saw wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear that the questions Crockett had raised couldn't simply be brushed aside. Fear that once spoken aloud, this secret could never be shoved back into silence. The hosts, wide-eyed and shaken, tried to move on, but there was no moving on. The tension clung to the air. Every person in that studio knew the show had crossed into history. Every viewer at home knew they had just seen something raw, unfiltered, unforgettable. Crockett ended with one final statement. Calm, but resolute. This isn't about me. It isn't even about you, Mr. Trump. It's about truth. Because when the truth is hidden, democracy itself is at risk. I won't let that happen. And with that, the conversation was over. Trump was still shouting, still red with fury, but Crockett's words lingered longer than his volume. The cameras caught it all. The fury, the calm, the clash of power and truth. And as the broadcast ended, one question burned into the minds of everyone watching. If this is what Crockett was willing to reveal live on air, what else does she have? The answer wasn't given that night, but the seed had been planted. The questions were alive, and no matter how loudly Trump denied, the echoes of Crockett's bombshell would not fade away. For the first time in years, the unshakable Donald Trump looked truly shaken.